So the new owner's manual has already come into its own, as I ended up needing to use the wiring diagram to diagnose an issue that I had yesterday evening, and I've ended up having to buy a new solenoid, 3-post solenoid. And the issue I'm having is well, this is the solenoid that's gone, and it's the ignition solenoid, or rather, well, it's not an ignition solenoid. It's not exactly for the ignition. I'll just find the page that get up what people actually call it. 168. Accessory feed, master switch to circuit breakers. And I was doing some work in the well, it's not even a fuse box, there's no fuses in there, there's not even breakers in there, but so let's just call it the wiring box. So I was doing some work under here yesterday, and when I put it all back together, turn the ignition on, nothing would light up. Normally you turn that and you hear something click, and obviously the thing that clicks is that solenoid. Well, it took me a while to work it out, and it was thanks to the wiring diagram. And at first I thought it might have been the key, the ignition key itself. So what I did was I checked the wiring diagram. It says there on the ignition we've got battery, and then the ignition has got two coming from ignition, two wires, one for the start button and one which was labelled 168. So that's when I found 168, looked up what it was, and then I focused on that with my voltage probe, and I worked out that it wasn't the switch, or it wasn't the key on switch. It's definitely this, and I'll show you how I did it. I'll have to untape everything. Hang on, I'll just pause it while I untape it all. Okay, so the way I worked it out, well, the way I figured out that it wasn't the ignition key on off switch was it's a 3-post solenoid, so I just put the probe on the switch. Obviously it's a body ground, and then if you look there, look on the probe, it's green. But then if I turn the key on, and then we put the probe back on, now it's live. So that wire comes directly from the on-off switch on the key. And then what should happen is once that switch is switched over, that terminal should be live. That's a permanent live. It's not switching over to there. And this wire feeds all the breakers. And what was happening was I've got no blower fans, I've got no Jake, I've got no aircon, that's mirror heaters, they wouldn't be working, and I've got no fan. So what I then did, well, hang on, I'm gonna have to prop the camera up, hold on. So what I did then was I simply just bridged them across with a screwdriver, just like that. And then if I flick the fan on, working, alternator clutch, yeah, all working, and blowers. Hang on. Yeah, all working. So thanks to the Peterbilt manual, I managed to work out that I mean, I suspected it was that anyway, but the manual helped me confirm it. So now I've got to swap this out, and I did buy a new one, but it's slightly different shape, so I'm going to have to do a bit of modification to fit it in place. But just to show you what should happen, once power goes to that switch, I'll show you what should happen and what's not happening on here. When you put power to that, you should hear a definite click from there, and this one will click. Hang on, I know it'll click because I've just made it click. But I've just got to reposition the camera. So I had to tilt the camera down because this is a ground, so I've got to hold it against the body. So if we put power on there now. Hang on, now listen. See? Click. So, not grounded, don't work. Ground it. So all I've got to do now is dismantle what's in here and fit the new one. So I've disconnected the battery, so there won't be any sparks flying, and just need to take the terminals off. Right, that was really fiddly. I had to do most of it without recording, but it's in there now and it all works. So just for the test, ignition, on, off, you can hear it click, and even get the low air light comes on. All my gauges initiate, temperature, oil temp, voltage works. All the gauges worked anyway, but the main test was the switches on the dashboard. So aircon, yeah, fan, yeah, and obviously blowers. So fixed. Right, one final part to this video. After I put everything back together, I remembered that I had this plaque in my toolbox with me, and as you can see it says circuit breakers, and it's actually out of an ERF, which stands for Edward Robert Foden, and where they used to be would have been on the passenger side, and it would have been down the bottom of that panel. And what you did was you unscrewed 2 plastic screws, the whole panel would come off, and behind there would be there'd be a row of buttons. Sorry, that's right. You'd undo the 2 screws at each end, you'd take that you take this metal panel off, and behind it would be a whole row of buttons, all breaker buttons. So if some electric device stopped working, you just take that off and you'd look for which button had popped out, and then you'd push it back in. And if there was no electric problem, the button would stay in. But if there was a short circuit, the moment you push the button in, it popped back out again. But anyway, for some reason, I can't remember where I got it from, but I've had it quite a long time, and I thought to myself, well, seeing as though this whole console underneath this panel is where all the circuit breakers are, I might as well fit it on. So I've now got another piece of ERF bolted to my Peterbilt. Happy days. Right, that's it. Thank you. Ta-ra.